the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, to congratulate President Muhammadu Buhari. But Atiku has refused, claiming the presidential elections was not free and fair, and it was full of inconsistencies. Well, joining us this evening to discuss, we have Ayo Ademiluyi,
the secretary of the NBA Lekki Forum. Good evening.
It's a pleasure to be here.
We still have back in the studio Emmanuel Agunze, the founder of Marco Kodri. Now, first and foremost, it's barely 24 hours after the certificate of return was issued to President Buhari and his vice, Yemi Osinbajo. The margin between the APC and the PDP was about 3.9 million thereabout. And some would say, well, the opposition, that's the PDP presidential candidate who lost in the election, said and pledged that he was going to concede defeat if that be the case. But this time around, they're saying he wouldn't congratulate the president because he doesn't deem this election free, fair, credible. So he can't have that exchange. What do you think, Ayo?
Ordinarily, we must concede the fact that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar reserves his right to approach the court of competent jurisdiction or any other judicial panel constituted by statutes of law to seek equitable release as per what transpired during the election. Now, what that means is that his right to challenge the results at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal remains reserved. On that pretext, if he has made that declaration that he rejects the results of the presidential election, then he also reserves the right not to congratulate the president-elect. That's General Muhammadu Buhari retired.
Not General.
The President Muhammadu Buhari, as is currently described. Now, be that as it is, the question that arises from that scenario is that, do we now say, on the basis of that right, that he should ordinarily concede the pronouncement, concede to the pronouncement of the Independent National Electoral Commission? I want to avert your minds to the provisions of the Electoral Act. Now, ordinarily, what constitutes a basis for a petitioner to even approach the petition, the Electoral Petitions Tribunal, in this case, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal, to contest whether or not an election was validly held, is the fact that if there is just an ounce of irregularity in that election. What that means is that if just one polling unit in the entire 36 states of Nigeria and the 5 capital territory has any ounce of irregularity, then the petitioner can approach the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Now, it's left to the the petitioner, in this case, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and his legal team, to come forward with appropriate evidence as to the claims in their petition in that regard.
Emmanuel, quickly weighing into this matter now. The president said, Atiku Abubakar says he's not going to congratulate the president-elect now this time around, and he understands that even presenting the case to the tribunal, the president and his team would likely counter that and is ready to go to the Supreme Court. Really, do you expect him to be more diplomatic about this before seeking redress?
First thing, I think Alhaji Abubakar has said that he's a Democrat, and I want to believe his statement of not congratulating the president was not because of any bias. I want to believe it's based on the fact that he feels that there have been some irregularities that he wants to really address. And if to the point of taking to the tribunal court, I want to believe also that Atiku Abubakar, after doing all this, is if he loses, would do the needful and congratulate the president.
So he's following due process.
He's following due process.
Well, we have a video of the former vice president, which is the PDP presidential aspirant, rejecting the results by INEC. Let's take a look at that video.
Can you imagine? Only yesterday, by that May announcement, the stock market lost 85 billion. I urge you to be patient and keep faith with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is not with the Nigerian people. Your quarrel is with those who stole their mandate. Please do not punish the people by divesting from Nigeria.
Gentlemen, we just heard what the former presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party had to say there. What do you make of that?
As valid,
especially how we started, can you imagine?
As valid as my legal submission on the right of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to contest the outcome of the elections, the reality is that, as valid as that submission is, the reality is that we have a political elite in this country that over the years have mastered the art of crying blue mother. Now what I mean by blue mother means that on a good day, all the sections of the ruling elite in this country have in their arsenal the machinery of rigging their way to power. So I'm speaking on here now. I do not have facts as to whether any party did any form of rigging, but I'm making a submission as to the political reality of this country. Now, the emotional outburst as of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar reflects that the winner takes it all mentality of the political elite. It's either you have it or you don't.
And talking about that quickly, Ayo, let me also use the legal term, put it to you. Okay. I'm sure over the weekend you'd have seen one video that resurfaced again where the APC actor, that's Adam Toshomale, mistakenly said, if you can't take the pain of rigging, I mean elections. That was
from 2015.
That was a while back. So do you think that was what played out? And in response as well, not necessarily to that video, but what the Atiku team has said is that they anticipated that there will be high levels of rigging and they were built for that, and they have videos because their team went out there on election day at different wards and
with body cameras.
Yes,
that's what we have.
You see, the reality is that we cannot shy away from the socio-economic environment within which we hold elections. We are a country, we are a neocolonial economy that have literally shut down production, literally shut down manufacturing, and the epicenter of our economy is the state. What I mean by the state, I mean the political apparatuses and the processes that come from the apparatuses. So, in any event, every average hustler out there wants to have a cut of the national pie or the national cake, as the case may be, because as even matured, beyond the cake. Now, as the case is, naturally, it is the candidate or the party that can muster the sufficient clout, economic clout, that can always have its way. Now, let me give you a scenario. If you look at it, on the day of the election, nearly everything was shut down. In advanced climes, where heavy production is going on, learning, research, technology, technological production is going on, we won't have to shut down society because
we are taking baby steps, and we are still in the jungle,
in the socio-economic jungle. In fact, at the least indices of world economic
and so you think that this is the reason why we're still, responding to elections the way we're
very well. For instance, you look at the U.S. presidential elections. As highly contested that election was, I mean, the 2014, 2016 United States presidential election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. The integrity of that particular system was so strong that the candidate that lost that's Hillary Clinton, considered victory on the spot, considered victory to Donald Trump on the spot. Why? The only shortcoming, the Democrats felt the election had was that they have, they have an opinion, not at that time an evidence. They have an opinion that there was a manipulation of their campaign machinery, of the Democrats campaign machinery, and that was what led to all the trials we have seen up to Michael Cohen, and then his sentencing to jail and all of that. So they didn't just rely on opinion at that time as, I'm not going to accept the integrity of the system. Now our courts are going to be shut down for practically the next 6 months because of election petition tribunal. Almost all the judges of the superior courts, from high court up to the Supreme Court, will have to be deployed to various. So
there's a rippling effect of sorts.
Yes, not only on the judicial system but also in the economy. What that means is that, for instance, he was lamenting about the stock market. Now, on a good day, if you look at the background of the elections itself, if you look at the narrative that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was coming up with, it was the narrative about sale of NNPC, the narrative about how privatization and all of that, and then the narrative, also the counter narrative by the President Muhammadu Buhari and the All Progressive Congress as to how Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was the element, and people around him were the elements behind the sale of Nigeria. When a person like Malam Nasru El-Rufai, the then head of the Bureau of Public Enterprises, was a technocrat handling the sale of Nigerian. So we are having a situation where there's a pandering, in a way, a pandering to foreign imperialist, economic backers. So the fall of stocks in the stock exchange is also a reflection of the uncertainty of that non-acceptance of the results and the poor framework of our elections in this country.
Talking about the framework of our elections in the country now, we can also take a flashback to 2015.
Very well.
We understand to a certain point, or we have accepted that certain malpractices or misconduct like rigging is a part of elections. Now, in 2015, Jonathan, the then president, considered defeat. Well, we would still say that the PDP or APC camp would still say that there were a whole lot of discrepancies over there, but he considered defeat. So don't you expect that that's the former candidate of the PDP should just
do the same
thing, so that we can strengthen our democracy? Because everybody has said, well, look at what happened in 2015, how Goodluck Jonathan just decided to concede defeat and say that, well, the blood of no Nigerian is worth having to be lost because of this electoral process.
For me, I think that speaks more to the personality of Goodluck Jonathan than the fact that he considered defeat. And if we look at the thing behind the whole matter, this thing has always been about attacking the previous government. The APC government attacking the previous government of what they did or did not do. And if we look at it also in another light, we found out that the president had been going for these elections in 2003 and been defeated then with Yaradua and then Jonathan before he won Jonathan in 2015. But all the times he lost, he never considered defeat. So all because he was also pursuing the fact that he felt there were so many irregularities and he needed those things to be brought to the same court of law. And that also speaks to several persons and how they handle issues.
So you're saying that he shouldn't expect from Atiku what he didn't do?
I want to disagree with my co-panelist. The scenario we saw in 2015 is clearly different from the scenario we are having now. Without, holding brief for Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. In any event, what happened in 2015 was that there was a realignment, so to speak, a heavy realignment of almost all the political structures around the current president, Muhammadu Buhari, to the extent that the margin we saw, the wide margin we saw that led to the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari was very clear. Now, what we are seeing playing out in this current scenario is that almost in let's say over 50% of areas where the head-to-head competition between President Muhammadu Buhari and Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, we are seeing a close match. For instance, in a place like Lagos, where I think, if I can recollect, President Muhammadu Buhari around 287 votes, 1,000 votes. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar had around 200 and something votes. That kind of marginal differences, that limited marginal differences, shows to you that the petitioner, the potential petitioner, who is Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, can proceed to the petition on one ground. Just even there are so many grounds, but the first ground the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal will look at was whether there is any irregularity.
You quickly hold on to that thought.
Yes. When we come back, we'll continue because we need to look at the steps that the petitioner has to take for his case to be valid. It's still Plus TV Africa, and we're talking on the issue of post-election issues. We'll be right back after the break. Stay tuned.
Glad to have you back, and if you're just joining us, well, this is our election studio where Nigeria decides, and we are doing some hard talk post the elections which were held on Saturday, and we have with us Ayo as well as Emmanuel. Now, gentlemen, we're talking about the stance of the former candidate, presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, and the alleged rigging of the election so far, so he's not going to concede defeat. But don't you think now we should be doing a stronger level of investigation before we talk about seeking redress? We should do a stronger level of investigation. If you remember, there was a time when he said, barely last month, when he said, well, the APC team had sent agents to China to go get trained, and they came back with a gadget that was meant to, it looks like a mobile phone, and was meant to slow down card readers in certain places where they don't necessarily have strongholds. Now, do you think he would be able to present this evidence, and
would it be admissible in court?
In law, he who asserts must prove. Now, I'm well aware that there are a lot of trending videos as to many irregularities as to the elections in the public domain. Now, the petitioner, the potential petitioner, who is Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, or any other person, any other potential candidate.
This wasn't a video from social media, by the way.
Very well. It's a liberty. They are liberty to approach the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. Now, the procedure as to the admissibility of electronic evidence is very clear. Now, the reality is that those electronically recorded materials must be presented to the court. The time the persons who recorded them would need evidence as to how and where and when they took all those recordings and their relevancy to the facts of the petition. Now, if those ones are proven, the Election Petition Tribunal is bound by law to admit them. Now, as to the weight, which is the next question we should ask ourselves, what is the weight of that electronic evidence as to whether it can, in any event, nullify the election in itself? We have seen
because
the case,
even on this show, we criticized his explanation of what sort of gadget that was. It wasn't clear. He said it looked like a phone.
I want to refer about our minds to the case of Aregbesola versus Oyinlola, in 2007, where heavy electronic evidence was admitted in evidence, and that upon the weight of that evidence, the gubernatorial election in that state was overturned. Of course, we have had a series of other decisions by the courts that have made admissibility of electronic evidence to be part of our jurisprudence in Nigeria. So it's not just to assert. We can continue to assert. I think the options left to any potential petitioner at this stage, including but not limited to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, is to begin to compile with his legal team, compile those available electronic evidence, comply with all the extant provisions of the Evidence Act and the Electoral Act.
Now, sorry to cut you there, Ayo, but we need to have Emmanuel's thoughts on this now. Okay. The appointment of the acting CJN was by the president of the country, who is the president-elect now as we see it. And this appointment also led to further appointment of the judges who have to deal with election tribunals and the whole lot of petitions that are coming that way. Do you think any level of instructions from the top will come once again? And do you think Atiku Abubakar will still at any point in time believe in the judiciary taking its right course, talking about justice?
Transparency.
Well, I think Atiku has to first start with bringing these evidences to these people. And because there are a lot of persons who are interested in this matter now, so each one would want to play very safely in this part. For me, whether Alhaji Atiku Abubakar wins the petition or not, he has already demonstrated the fact that things cannot just be done and then people just take it whole like and sinker. I think that is the fact that he wants to really, really stress down. Not necessarily about whether he's going to win or not going to win. The thing is this, there's the law, and these persons who are there will not be playing with these things because it's going to affect the next time. Because whatever that happens, and if this person stay till 2023, they're also going to be thinking of futuristic things.
But some have said the judiciary is corruptible, so you don't think that that will play, talking about the appointments and ensuring that whatever evidences are presented are just a little bit sidelined, because we know the culture of sweeping evidences under the carpet.
We can say that may play, but it's not still certain. However, from the very, very, very crux of just taking out the former CJ Onohe was very, very suspicious. But regardless of what happens, we know very well that it may affect it, it may not. But I would say that that singular act of taking Onohe is something that many Nigerians will keep talking.
That's a different kettle of fish, and so it's something that would take us all night if we have to talk about, the legality of an organ being taken out and suspended. But let's go back to the steps that the petitioner has to take in, gathering evidence. You did mention briefly when we started that the validity of election, to show that there was election that held in the first place. You talked about proof of if there be any ounce of irregularity. You talked about proper evidence as to claims made. Like you said, the video that he put out, he has a right to do that, but he has to back it up with evidence. Again, I'm asking, how weighty should this evidence be? Must it be beyond any doubt whatsoever?
No, the proceedings as to election petitions tribunal, election petitions generally civil procedure in nation. You don't need to be beyond reasonable doubt as in criminal matters.
Okay.
What the tribunals will look at is whether the evidence presented before them, the preponderance of evidence, what we call preponderance of evidence, whether on the comparison or the weight of on the balance of convenience, the preponderance of the evidence adduced by the petitioner is sufficient enough to nullify the election. Now, I've already stated on earlier that the grounds for even bringing a petition is not even whether or not, but possibly elections were inconclusive in one area or not, or whether there was alleged violence in one particular area or not. It is even sufficient, even just on one ground, even if it's just on the ground of irregularity. Now, what do we consider to be irregularity? Now, under irregularity generally refers to short circumstances where there are maybe there are cases of ballot papers that were heavily completed. They are, maybe tampered with, as the case may
manipulation,
be. Then manipulation of the ballot papers. Then 2, where there is any allegation of possibly tampering with the processes of election, maybe the time, and then possibly there's a shift of time or things that were manipulated in favor of the respondent, that is the winner now of the election. Then 3 is where there is cases, allegations, because the court will have to now, the petitioner will have to now lay flat as to those allegations of violence, of maybe of as you have it, alleged kidnapping of quote unquote alleged snatching of ballot papers or burning of ballot papers and all of that. Then now I want to raise an issue as to the issue of card readers. Now our law is grey; it's not yet fully clear as to the instances in which maybe card readers malfunction, and we have led campaigns as to that the law should be explicit. When they were doing
let me just quickly brief you on what happened on the eve before the announcement of the election results. Now, Osita Chidoka of the PDP team raised an issue asking that INEC, as necessity, needs to release the details of the card readers that were used, so that then INEC can then do a tally, make those details open, so that everybody can then look at it, and all of the details presented as collation results from the
I think I remember the submission.
And he said, well, that has to be done. And the response from INEC is that, well, since you've written a letter and made that petition, they are going to investigate that. So the response from INEC wouldn't be that part of the information that the article team is supposed to present.
I think I remember.
But we know bureaucracies and how long it takes for such reports to come back. It lays low on somebody's desk, or intentionally or unintentionally. It's not just being paid attention to.
I remember the submission of Mr. Oshita Shidoka, because I was equally following the proceedings at the National Collation Center. That submission was made after the suspension, the postponement of the last election.
Exactly.
And they were like, they are going to reconfigure the card readers. If you remember, the INEC
the call was after we had this Saturday's election. Yes. Now,
the question as to the independent verification of the card readers. Now, the INEC said, they are going to work on that, and they are going to get back to PDP or any other party that is interested in independent verification of the card readers. Now, the option left for the potential petitioners is within the proceedings of that election petition proceedings.
It calls on INEC to
join INEC as a party. Ordinarily, INEC is even a nominal party in more election petition proceedings, and subpoena the officer in charge of card readers. I don't know what office must have been given within INEC to be cross-examined as to the functionality of those card readers vis-a-vis the instances where the potential petitioner was have made allegations of irregularities. That would be the option left to the potential petitioners.
But how then can we ensure that, even now talking about the results that the card readers have captured, because we are going to have reconfiguration by March 9. These are the same card readers. So then now we might not likely necessarily get.
What we're going to see really is that we are going to see a plethora of cases in the next 6 months. Election petitions flying right, left, and center. But one of the major, the novel legal points that the election petition proceedings would open is the question of the card readers, as I've said, and then results obtained at the polling units on the basis of those card readers, as you have said. Now, our election petitions tribunal will be called upon, will be invited to make pronouncements as to the functionality thereof, whether results obtained from those card readers which are not verified by third party or by agents or parties can be accepted by parties. You understand what I mean? Now, for instance, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has made a submission that there are evidence, testimonies from agents of his party across the country as to irregularities. Now, if you remember that the same, if you look at when the National Collation Center proceedings was going on, some of those recs, returning officers, were saying, were the party agents signing to those things? And the answer, if you remember the answer is yes. Now, ordinarily, the provision of the Electoral Act is that whatever you have against a result obtained at a polling unit, for instance, or at the State Collation Center, for instance, you can reserve it. But upon the pronouncement of returning officer, you sign. Then your own collation, for instance, let's say in polling unit A, an agent feels that his party has 30 votes, and INEC or the returning officer of INEC or election officer of INEC says, oh, the party has 20 votes. The procedure is that, oh, sign for the 30 votes. You want to challenge it. There's a column you will say, I sign, but I'm going to challenge this particular result. So it's the option left for potential petitioners is to now lead those party agents will become witnesses. They will become witnesses. That's why election petitions take a very long time. Now, the procedure has become so effective that you put this time limit.
Okay, we have less than 1 minute to end this segment of the show. But quickly now, weighing this, when they had the NBA conference, that's the Ikeja branch, sometime in January last month, Femi Falana, a senior advocate of Nigeria, said, in all of these petitions to the tribunal, election petitions, I mean, every litigant and lawyer must ensure that the funds used to pay these lawyers or these legal practitioners to ensure that justice is served must also do due inquiry as to where the funds are coming from. If not, even your petition is on the line as well. What sort of message do you think we should be looking towards that and ensuring that at the end of the day, even if you're making a petition, it has to be void of any sort of corrupt practice?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing, because
you can't call for fairness when you're not coming fair.
If I were to add something about why we really need to do a lot of work in Nigeria, is that most times after elections we don't do a kind of debrief to know what we did wrongly that we need to do rightly for the next election. We only talk about things like there was rigging, there was this, but we do real assessment. Because what is happening now will still happen in 2023, and it will be the same thing.
Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Hopefully it doesn't happen.
But my last submission is that
on those funds,
on this issue of funds and the entire election petition procedure is that we need to have a special court, and I think I've raised it on this program, that will be designed purposely for all matters connected to elections, to constitutional issues. I've raised it that our courts will be expanded. Possibly we should have a constitutional court that can have his appeals lying there from to the Supreme Court. So that, for instance, now I've said it, our courts are going to be disrupted for the next 6 months. Many cases are going to be abandoned. Many people that need urgent intervention of the courts will be left in limbo. So possibly we need to restructure our judicial system in a way. We have a separate and independent court to cater for election petitions, constitutional issues, possibly a constitutional court. All of that.
Well, let's hope that these issues or these submissions are considered by the powers that be. Well, we want to thank you very much for being here, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Agunze, founder Makoko Dream, and of course Ayo Ademiluyi, NBA Secretary, Lekki Forum. Thank you so much. You put us through a legal class. We learned a little bit of law today, so maybe we might get a certificate after now.
And right after the short break, we'll be bringing you the last segment of this show where Nigeria decides. Stay with us.